Hey everybody, it's time for the weekly news recap for the 20. Why do I never check this ahead of time? 26th of February to the 3rd of March, 2024. I think that's right. Anyway, we're getting started. Let's just go. We're starting off amazing already. Right. So Moon Studios showed off a bit more of No Rest for the Wicked this week. There was a fairly lengthy live stream, went on for about an hour and a half, where they were showing off their latest game. So if you're not familiar with Moon Studios, you might be familiar with their last two games they made, which was the Ori games, Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisp. They've decided to move on from the Metroidvania series. They kind of feel like they've made their mark there, and they want to now move on to do the action RPG series instead. So Diablo, Path of Exile, that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm going to skip into gameplay. They're doing setting up a lot of the storyline there, but basically it's your kind of standard Shattered World thing, and you're this lone hero there to save it and what have you. I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's kind of the deal. They're going for there's this plague that is ravaging the land. It hasn't been seen for 1,000 years, COVID, and we're going with that kind of thing. You wake up marooned on this island after your ship is attacked by people, and now you are starting from scratch with no items and so on. So you need to find all of your equipment. It's pretty standard, pretty standard affair for the Diablo type clones, anyway. What's interesting here, though, is that it's not going down Diablo's route of just clicking everything. Just click as fast as you can, possibly, or mash the button as fast as you can, I suppose, if you're playing on consoles. No Rest for the Wicked is entirely WASD or analog stick control, so you're not going to be clicking on the map for places to go to and stuff like that. If you want to interact with something, you have to walk up to it. Additionally, the entire world is not procedurally generated. They went out of their way to say that a couple of times. Everything is bespoke, everything is crafted, environment artists, environment assets and props and stuff have all been placed deliberately. The only thing that is generated or randomly generated is the loot, which is good because that's kind of the whole point of action RPGs and lootables, slasher looters, and so on. The whole point is that the loot is random. You don't know what you're going to get, but hopefully you're going to get something good. The WASD controls is an interesting idea. I'm going to move on a little bit here when we get to the combat and stuff, because they have also made some changes to combat that you don't normally see in action RPGs. I don't know why I'm hanging out here. I think, it's like you can climb a lot of the stuff here. There's actually a fair amount of verticality in the maps. If you're looking for something, does it look like you can... Well, what they said was, and it was very Todd Howard, which was, look, see that mountain, you can climb it? It was a little bit like that, which was, if it looks like it's climbable, you can probably climb it. Kind of what they were going for. Don't worry, the verticality stuff, not everything is just set dressing. A lot of it is actually to be used. I am going to skip ahead to combat, though. So what's different here now is action RPGs, typically you just click on the guy until he dies. That's usually the Diablo way of doing things, and it's the Path of Exile way of doing things, and so on. There was like a joke for Diablo 2 specifically, because it was very popular at the time, that you could tell someone was playing Diablo because of how fast they were clicking. All you could hear was click, 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 click. Of course, that you couldn't necessarily then tell if they were playing StarCraft or something like that as well, because they're also clicking very fast. But anyway, none of that for No Rest for the Wicked. Your character and combat is based around animation, which is how Dark Souls does things. It's how the vast majority of fighting games do things. Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and so on. Basically, if your attack collides with the enemy model, they take damage. That's the way it's supposed to work. Which is, again, the Souls way of doing things. It's not the arcadey Diablo way of doing things, which is just you pressed a button near the enemy, so they got hit, kind of thing. That also means that you'll be parrying, dodging, and so on. Dodging, not a huge thing in action RPGs typically. Mostly you just try to heal through it or just run around the enemy until they're done attacking and then come back in. So yeah, you're gonna have to pay a bit more attention, which probably means you're not going to be fighting big mobs of enemies. Which again, I'm gonna keep referencing Diablo because it's clear that's what they're going for. But you're not going to be fighting like hundreds of enemies at once, which is something you would do in Diablo type games. Um, Looks like you're going to be like, if you have to fight 3 enemies, you're like, oh, this is bad. I'm in trouble. Okay. What they're going into here is the loot tables. Um, so typically in ARPGs, the way loot tables work is, your white items are basically trash. You sell them more or less, or convert them into resources. Your blue items are kind of your bread and butter. You'll be using them for the vast majority of the game, and your purple items are, ooh, that's nice. Hang on to that one. And then if you ever happen to get a gold item, it's like, oh, incredible. But probably doesn't work for your character class, and you go, damn, that sucks. A little different this time around. A lot of the items actually have pretty good uses. So the way they're looking at it is your gold items are uniques. There's only one of them in the game or something like that. They have very specific, unique abilities that are very much crafted for a particular style of combat. May not suit your particular style of combat. Purples are weapons that have some really good abilities attached to them, but they also have some kind of downside to them. So they are cursed items. If you were okay putting up with the downside, it's like, oh, the cooldowns are now significant on your weapon. You're like, I barely use these secret abilities, so that's fine. I'll go with the plus 20 to damage instead, thanks. Then that's fine with you. Blue items are somewhat randomized. They have okay buffs, but not amazing. Like, they're okay. And chances are they probably don't work for your style of combat anyway. But they're a little bit better than your standard white items. White items, however, are incredibly customizable, is the way they're going with it. So they're not really the trash item that you would normally go with Diablo weapons and so on. If you ever pick up whites or grays, you're like, ugh. In this one, while they don't have any specific abilities attached to them, all of their slots are empty, so you can fill them up with whatever you want instead. So it makes them very customizable that way. It means you're just not trashing everything you come across, which is kind of an issue, particularly with later Diablo games, where practically everything you picked up, you were just trashing it. Anyway, there's a lot more to this video. As you can see, it's a full 25 minutes. They go into a bit more of the world building, excuse me, character creation. They talk a little bit about the art style, the fact that everything is sort of trying to give off this painted feel to it. They talk a little bit about play style and that there are no specific character classes. Like Diablo does have specific, like necromancer, barbarian, paladin, that kind of thing, and they all have specific skill trees. No Rest for the Wicked is a lot more freeform, which is again a lot closer to a Souls type thing, where you just have your stats. That's kind of it. Build your stats the way you want your character to be built. Skip ahead a little bit. They're talking about bosses. Bosses will be like this big, difficult thing. Again, it's not just a question of just clicking on the boss until it dies. You will very much have to pay attention to what they're doing. Again, Souls, fighting games, that kind of thing. Very different for the action RPG genre. Sacrament is the name of the town, so they're talking about kind of the hub world and how you can build it up over time. It's mostly desolate by the time you get to it. It's been ravaged by the plague and so on, and you can use your resources to sort of, build it up. Make the smith a little bit better, make the general store a bit better. Add a magic tower and so on, that kind of thing. So you can kind of craft it the way you want it to, or just go after things that you're interested in first, and then move on to things later. They also talk about you being able to buy your own real estate if you really want to. It's very expensive as it is. That one's a little bit too on the nose. But you can have your own place and fill it up with stuff. Go out into the world and collect resources, which is a little Stardew Valley, which is kind of interesting. I was not expecting that. None of it is grid based, none of it's snap based. So you can put things wherever you want. The vast majority of the items that you place down have some kind of use to them. Chests that you can store stuff in it. You've got this spinning wheel that you can use to create yarn. You've got a workbench down at the back and so on, and you can build it up the way you want it to. What to talk about? Oh, this is like end game stuff that the maps that you've been to will change over time. more enemies or more dangerous enemies might show up, depending on what you've done in the area. But the big thing that they're going into is that it's early access. They'll be launching into early access some stage in actual date. I don't think so. I think it's just April. Oh, no, that's the Game Informer article. It's March 5th. I don't know. It's April at some point. They're going to be in early access on Steam. Yeah, I might have to break my early access pledge for that one because that looks really good. And I'm really interested to play it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, moving on. Pokemon, right? Pokemon had a Pokemon Presents for 2024 this week. I don't really follow the Pokemon games all that much, but there's some interesting stuff here. So Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are getting some updates. It's mostly around like endgame raids and stuff like that. Pokemon Go as a crossover with Horizons. Horizons is the latest Pokemon anime, so some of those characters will be showing up and stuff like that. Pokemon Sleep is getting some new Pokemon, the legendaries from Generation 2. And then a bunch of apps that I don't think are even available in Europe. Pokemon Cafe. Never heard of it. Or Pokemon Unite for that matter. No, I have heard of it. A new app, the Pokemon trading card game Pocket is effectively the digital version of the trading card game. It's not clear how exactly this will work, or if spending money on it. Is it a loot crate type thing? What is it? Or a loot box or whatever type deal. My feeling is that it's probably going to go down the loot box route. Your card packs will just be loot boxes. But this is a way to collect the cards without having to spend, $1 million on an original Pikachu or something. The digital thing. Pokemon Legends Z-A is probably something to do with Pokemon XY, which I think was the Wii Pokemon game. Sure? Question mark? Allegedly going to be released in 2025, so there won't be a Pokemon game this year, which is new. They're actually going to take a break and spend some actual time developing the game. Amazing. It's not clear if this is like a kind of... the way that some of the Pokemon games have Pokemon Gold and whatever, and then there's Pokemon Heart Gold, which is like a more enhanced version of it or a remaster of it or what have you. I think that's what Pokemon Legends Z-A is supposed to be. Effectively a remaster of X and Y, but we're not clear. All we know is that it has something to do with Lumio's city from X and Y, so maybe that's what it has to do. Again, I don't really follow Pokemon, so that could be nothing. Could have nothing to do with it. I could be talking at my ass. I don't know. You'll have to tell me. Anyway, moving on. Reynada's coming west this fall for PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC, not Xbox, because why would it? It's Japanese games. Nobody plays them on Xbox. Anyway, so this was a question from last week. This was one of the games that was shown off in the Nintendo Direct, but was not shown off notably in any of the Western-focused ones. So Europe, the ones from America, didn't show this game, whereas the Japanese Nintendo Direct did show this game. The question was, is it coming west, or is it going to be a Japanese exclusive? And Furyu have come back to say, no, it is going to be released in the West, it's just going to be released later. So it's going to be out in Japan some stage in July 25th, and then we'll head over to Western, American and European territories at some stage in the fall after that has been localized. There is no plan to localize the audio, it's just going to be text. It's going to be subtitled and the Japanese voiceover instead, which means the localization will be much faster. Cool. I'm pretty sure that's what Furyu did for their most recent games as well. Monarch, I think, is their last game, and that, as I recall, did not have English voiceover. Pretty sure it had Japanese voiceover. Anyway, that's confirmation, which I kind of assumed because Furyu had released their games already in the West, so I kind of assumed, but that's just confirmation for it. Your free game on Epic Games this week is Aerial Knight's Never Yield. Take the role of Wally, a mysterious character that has recovered what was taken from. He's already recovered it, so Why? Why am I playing him if he's already recovered it? Hopefully you were fast enough to outrun your enemies. Okay, so I've recovered it, but they're gonna try to take it back again, I guess. Something like that. Run, jump, slide, dash for acrobatic variants leading to dope combinations and avoid the challenges that await. I'm pretty sure it's a Cannibalt clone. Or is it a Jet Set Radio? Okay. Is it a Bit Trip Runner type thing? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a Cannibalt Bit Trip Runner type thing. Cool. Could be interesting. I made a game that looks very like that, you know? This one is obviously much nicer looking. Mine did not look nice, but still, I made one that looked like it. Anyway, PlayStation Plus Essential refresh for March. So these are the free. Again, it's not necessarily free. You do have to pay a subscription, but still. March monthly games for PlayStation Plus Essential. Essential is the lowest tier for PlayStation Plus. You will need it. Hey, Melwin, how you getting on? You will need PlayStation Plus Essential to play the vast majority of games online. Anyway, this week, or this month rather, we have Formula 1 2023. Hey, Skeet Banana, you getting on? Quack. We will, what was I saying? Formula 1 2023 is the way fucking sports games works is that it's technically the 2022 game, so this is quite old at this point. But again, it's racing. Does that change a lot? I don't know. Probably not. Have a flu? Oh no, terrible. Terrible. Anyway, Sifu is probably the standout this month. It's a very good roguelite kung fu style game. The way it plays is you're trying to get revenge for the death of your master. You're going through the gauntlet of his former students or something like that, and you're doing cool kung fu shit along the way. The gimmick for this game is that every time you are defeated in combat, you age dramatically and then come back. But every time you age, your health is reduced, but your damage increases. So you're trying to find this equilibrium where you're okay with the health bar as long as you can get some extra damage, and then obviously you'll age too far and die. So the idea is, of course, to not die. More or less, and get through it without being defeated too many times and that kind of thing. It's a really good game. Very hard though. Do keep that in mind. Hello Neighbor 2. I don't know why that needed a sequel. The first one was boring, but okay. Hello Neighbor is a kind of thing where your neighbor is up to some kind of shenanigans and you're stealthily trying to figure out what those shenanigans are. And then Hello Neighbor 2, I believe, is a co-op version of it. Destiny 2 The Witch Queen is another expansion to Destiny 2. It's still not clear if you actually need to own Destiny for this, or can you just play it? Or is Destiny free to play at this point? Destiny 2 is required to play. Yeah, you do need to have it. That's weird. Weird thing to put into your Essentials thing. So you can pretty much cross that game off, because chances are you already own it. It was promising until they ruined it. Hello Neighbor? Yeah. It had a good idea, and then it just didn't evolve from it in any way whatsoever. Anyway, moving on. Those are some of the games you can play soon, but what if you wanted to play something right now? Well, I'm not going to look at the screen. You can play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth if you want. I don't want to know anything about it. I will play it eventually at some point. I can't even read chat when I'm doing this, so hopefully you're not saying something silly. This is a continuation of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project that will essentially be 3 games at some point. I am dying to play it, but I haven't played Remake just yet. And as I've talked about previously, I have a weird sort of mental block about Final Fantasy VII. It's a little bit on a pedestal for me, and I'm reluctant to play the remake in case I don't like it. Even though everything I've heard about it suggests I would like it a lot, but whatever, I'm in a weird position like that. Anyway, moving on. That's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Hang on. I'm trying to do this without looking at the screen. Okay, we're good. No, Melman, stop! Batman's in it? What? Yeah, I'm well aware that character dies, but they mightn't actually die in this new one because it's sort of a new... it's kind of a sequel to the original game rather than a remake. Anyway, let's not get into it. Okay. After Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we have Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons remake, a remake nobody asked for, and should probably have just been a remaster, but whatever. They decided to do it. I was joking. I know. Um, yeah, I mean, this game did not need a remake, but whatever. They've gone ahead and done it. Yeah, chances are you can get the original for very cheap. And from what I can see from the remake, there's not a huge difference to the game. Like, does it look nicer? Yeah. Is the lighting a little bit better? Are the character models a bit nicer? Sure. Did it need a remake though? No, not really. But whatever, they went ahead and did it anyway. It's still a good game. If you haven't played it before, I would encourage you to give it a try. This is the first game from Hazelight, the people who made A Way Out and It Takes Two, which have become pretty synonymous with co-op at this point. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is kind of strange in that it's a co-op game you play by yourself, and that you have to control both characters both at the same time. They just added couch co-op, and that's about it. Yeah, pretty much. more or less, that's kind of all they did. And yeah, threw it into Unreal Engine 4, I think, and that is doing most of the lighting and graphical work for them. It looks plastic. Yeah, that's Unreal Engine for you. If you don't really do much to it, Unreal Engine tends to look a little bit plasticky. Anyway, that's Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons remake, and then a remaster everyone did actually ask for. Or no, nobody asked for, but everybody wanted. They just didn't know that they wanted it that much. Is Dark Forces. So Star Wars Dark Forces is probably the first good Star Wars game. Hot take? No? Extremely cold take, probably. It's based off the Doom engine. If you can't tell, it is very much based off Doom. Probably, it's probably responsible for LucasArts getting into like making a lot of Star Wars games. It kind of spawned the whole Dark Forces and Jedi Knight series. The Jedi Knight series is excellent for Star Wars games. It also tells the story of the Death Star plans and how they got into the hands of the rebels before Disney decided to say, lol, no. We want to make more money, go watch Rogue One instead. So yeah, like the opening level of this is you getting the Death Star plans and giving it to the rebels as Kyle Katarn. But obviously that has been retconned now by Disney, so now this is more of an Elseworld thing. But still, very good game. And now you can actually play it. You don't need to have some sort of weird virtual box and get DOSBox up and running and, spend about 4 hours trying to figure out why it's not playing, only to just go, I'm gonna go play something else instead. Now you don't have to care about any of that. You can just install it and play it. Anyway, I have been thinking about doing a Star Wars series, because there are a lot of really good games in the Star Wars series that I do want to go back and revisit. I was kind of waiting, to be honest, I'm waiting for a Dark Forces sort of VR thing, or Dark Forces 2 remaster or something like that. And if that does happen, or if I can find a mod that makes it at least palatable, then yeah, I think we're good to go. Because I think I have all of the other games that I want to play. These accessible in some way. I'd want to do the Jedi Knight series and the Dark Force series. They're kind of the same thing. Kind of a continuation of each other. And then just the Force Unleashed series, which I don't like, but I think we should play them because they're funny. And then Knights of the Old Republic, of course. Why wouldn't I not play that? Anyway, we'll see how that goes, but I've been thinking about it. Anyway, Rescue and Fractalus paved the way for Star Wars games. I don't know that game. What's Rescue and Fractalus? You'll have to tell me about that later. Kind of curious about that now. Okay, so unfortunately, it's now time to talk about the worst parts of video games. Video game industry. So Sony has joined the layoff bandwagon and has decided to lay off 900 employees across the PlayStation studios. This is a Substack article by Ethan Gach. It's called Dead Game. Ethan Gach is formerly a Kotaku editor, I think, and now he works over on Aftermath. But this is his personal Substack thing, and I just thought it was interesting because it's a little bit more of an editorial piece, and it gives you a bit more stuff that you wouldn't typically hear from the usual outlets, because they have to play a little bit nice with publishers, whereas it's a personal thing. They don't really have to do that much anyway. So despite PlayStation having good hardware and great games, apparently that's not enough to save 900 jobs. Sony's strategy over the past decade has hit a ceiling, which is their strategy of going all in on this, prestige cinematic narrative thing instead of just making fun games. Anyway, Sony have announced the difficult news about our workforce from Jim Ryan. Of course, they got Jim Ryan to do it because he's about to leave the company. Anyway, what's happening? Reduction of overall headcount globally by about 8%. There's that 8 to 10% again. That weird decimation that everyone seems to have agreed is the right number. Weird. Weird that they all agreed the same number. Which ends up being about 900 people. PlayStation Studios' London studio will close entirely, which is fucking bullshit. That's London studio and Japan studio that they've shuttered now. Cuts across Insomniac. Spider-Man made them fucking millions. Spider-Man 1 and 2. Yep, they're getting cuts. Naughty Dog, Uncharted, Last of Us, like their tentpole games. Again, they're getting cuts. Guerrilla Games, Horizon Games, again, make them a lot of money. They're getting cuts. And then Firesprite, who do a lot of their experimental things. Kind of one of their few studios that's still doing experimental things. LucasArts game from 1984. One of your first streams. Okay, I definitely need to go check that out then. Interesting. Okay. Smaller reductions across other studios and support teams, so they don't go into, but effectively everyone's going to be touched. And some projects have been cancelled. When they say some, they're really burying it because it's like vast majority of their game projects have been cancelled now. Jim Ryan pitched the restructuring as proposed changes that are still subject to collective consultation. Ethan Gack says that they assume it's just they haven't decided who exactly is getting cut or whatever. That's not entirely true because PlayStation Studios is spread across the world. While in the US, they can effectively say, lol, you're fired, goodbye. In Europe, or the UK specifically, which is where they have London studio, they have to go into consultation with various union groups, with various employee groups and so on, so they can't just fire people. They have to give a heads up and have like a package and so on. And in Japan, it's even more strict than that. So not only do they have to go through consultation, but they also have to have a plan for what employment opportunities they're going to give the people they're laying off. So it's not enough to just say goodbye. You have to either find a position for them elsewhere in the company or find a position for them in another company. So it's much more difficult to just lay off somebody in Japan. But not in the US. They can just say, see ya. Bye. Thanks for all that. Thanks for doing all that work and making me all that money. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Notable that Sony made him deliver this bad news after disappearing him from the company's public-facing communications, because they're basically having Jim Ryan do it because he'll be gone in about a month, and people hated him anyway. They're having him deliver the bad news instead of having Herman Hulst do it, although he didn't exactly get away with not having to say stuff. Interim COO Hiroki Totoki had this to say about PlayStation last month, I think, on their investors call. Organizations had a problem with translating their creative output into sustainable profitability for increasing margins. I wonder why that could be. Is it because you have them develop a game for 5 years with nothing to put out in the interim time, and then they just put out the game, and then you fire them? Incredible how they're not able to take sustainable profitability out of that. Weird. Anyway, Spider-Man 2 offers a perfect example of the duality of PlayStation right now. It's critically acclaimed and has now sold over 10 million copies, but it also cost over $300 million to make. Took longer than expected and had ballooning scope. So this is kind of their issue with their big prestige games, is that they take forever to make. They cost a lot of money to make, and then Sony don't have anything in between, which is where they're at right now. They've kind of released all their big games. God of War Ragnarok, Last of Us Part 2, Horizon, the second one, whatever it's called, Spider-Man 2, and so on. They don't have anything now. We were talking about it 2 weeks ago, I think, where they just have, what are we going to put out? I don't know. And then Jim Ryan wanted them to go all in on live service games. As we're well aware, everybody has live service fatigue at this point. We don't want any more live service games. We have if you are interested in live service games, you are playing them now. You already have the game you want to play. They're designed to take up all of your time. You do not have time to put into another game that also wants you to play it nonstop and treat it like a second job. You have a second job. It's Destiny, or it's Fortnite, or it's whatever it is you're playing. Final Fantasy 14. You don't have time for whatever the fuck Sony decides to spit out. Plus, how many live service games have been released and then shuttered almost immediately because nobody has time to play them? But that's what they wanted to go all in on. And now that Jim Ryan is leaving and they're realizing that nobody really wants to play live service games, / nobody has the money and time to play those live service games, they find that they have all their studios working on nothing. And if they're going to do the whole 5 years development thing, they're going to have no games to put out for 5 years. They kind of fucked themselves, basically, what's happened here. So yeah, they're going to have to rethink it, which is essentially what Herman Hulst is saying, head of PlayStation Studios. Anyway, at the time it was heard when they were talking about issues about margins and what have you, that 1 or 2 studios would be up for closure, and the ones that were singled out were London Studio and Media Molecule. It's a little bit notable that they were both UK studios. Anyway, Media Molecule, we've already heard, has had a bunch of layoffs, and Dreams has effectively been closed down, and we don't really know what Media Molecule are working on now. London Studio was working on a new multiplayer live service thing. Big shock again. But no. They were pivoted away from the VR games that they had been working on, only to move over to work on this live service urban fantasy thing, which is not something they had the personnel for. All their personnel had experience in first-person VR stuff. And they decided, hey, you guys are video game programmers, you can just make a completely different genre, right? No problems? No? That would be a big issue, actually. Turns out, yeah, it was kind of a big issue. Progress was very slow, due in part to the studio switching to a completely new genre. And they did not expect the game to see the light of day anytime soon, and now it won't, ever, because London Studio has been closed. Even more disgustingly, this is Jim Ryan visiting the studio just 5 days before the layoffs were announced. Smiling for the camera. Couldn't have told them? Couldn't have dropped a hint? Something? Maybe get your CV in order? No? Couldn't have said something like that? Okay, so London Studio wasn't exactly failing to hit milestones or anything like that. Why it was singled out is not particularly clear. Probably because their game was going to be still a while off and it was a live service thing, I guess, but that wasn't their fault. They were doing what they were told to make, and their reward for it was to be shuttered. London Studio was doing its best to make good on Sony's new strategy to ship over 10 live service games by 2025, and yeah, again, their reward was fuck you, basically. Jim Ryan, meanwhile, apparently met with the studio just last week. A photograph taken at the time shows him posing with members with a smile on his face. It's that there. Anyway, Herman Hulst, right, head of PlayStation Studios, but also head of Guerrilla Games, was talking about what they're gonna do now that we have no games to put out. Delivering the immersive, narrative-driven stories that PlayStation Studios is known for at the quality bar that we aspire to requires a re-evaluation of how we operate. PlayStation Studios is only known for that narrative thing for the last 10 years, maybe. Before that, it was known for much smaller, much more niche games. That's what PlayStation was known for. Fun things. Fun, quirky games. That's what they were known for. Now they're known for the same game, but it has a different name on it, effectively. Anyway, he continues, we have brought brilliant and successful studios into our family. Yeah, you did, and then you fired them all. Thanks. We have recruited talent from across our industry and beyond, and then you fired them. But growth itself is not an ambition. Yes, it is. It's a publicly owned company. That's literally capitalism's whole deal, is to just grow unsustainably and fuck everybody else along the way. We are able to craft games that push the boundaries of play and deliver what you expect from it. How can you push boundaries and also deliver what's expected? These are opposed. These are opposing principles, Herman. Anyway, we've decided that some of those projects will not move forward, and by some he means pretty much all of them. The only ones that seem to have survived is the Horizon multiplayer game, and that's it. The Last of Us online game, we already knew it was gone. The Twisted Metal game, I believe, is also gone. Whatever Fire Sprite we're working on, also gone. the Haven Studios one, the Jade Raymond game. Name I keep fucking forgetting that I just call Porn Stars because I don't remember what it's called. It's not even called anything remotely like that. I just never remember what the game is called. Anyway, not clear if that's still going. Probably it is because I think that was pretty far into development, so they'll probably keep going with that game. But again, it's a live service and everyone has fatigue from it. Anyway, The Last of Us Online game was cancelled by Naughty Dog and by Sony after Bungie came in and said, this game's shit. No one's gonna play this. But the stupid thing is, right? Naughty Dog had said, and they had come out to say, that they didn't want to become a company completely devoted to maintaining a live service game, which is what is going to happen to your studio once you put out a live service game. You're going to have to just stick with it for years to come. And as Ethan Gach points out here, a studio doesn't just magically realize this several years into development. Like, they knew way in advance of this, but they kept going developing this game that they didn't want to make, they didn't want to have to maintain, and it cost them a lot of money. It cost Sony way too much money. It was still costly. People definitely lost their jobs because of it. Like, that is incredibly poor management. You gave a game genre, live service type thing, to a studio that didn't want to make the game and didn't want to maintain it, and you kept pushing with it instead of just setting up a new team to work on it instead and let them keep doing the thing that they're known for, that your console is known for, that you have said yourself, PlayStation Studios, narrative driven, blah blah blah. That's literally Naughty Dog, and you wanted them to make a live service thing. Our philosophy has always been to allow creative experimentation. Oh, we'll allow it, but then we won't let it actually into the game because all of our most recent games are the same fucking game. One company's change of plan is another person's life completely uprooted and thrown into a jobless panic. Very good. We're changing plans, and that means we need to fire everybody. People who have already decided that they don't want to play the next Call of Duty or the next God of War will not be swayed by just a bigger and better version of those things. You need to diversify. You need different types of games, and you need smaller games. You can put them out quicker, so you can find out if people are liking it or not. Don't wait 8 years into development and then spit out Duke Nukem Forever and everyone goes, what the fuck is this piece of shit, you know? You can't do that kind of thing, and that's exactly what Sony's doing, and they're banking on reputation at this point. They're banking on name recognition, you know? Oh, that's The Last of Us, I'll play that. Oh, that's God of War, I'll play that. If you have someone who's going, I don't like the new God of War, or I don't like the new Last of Us, or The Last of Us in general, like myself, I don't particularly like the new God of War versus the old one. I really vastly prefer the old one. Horizon is incredibly boring sounding to me. Every time I decide to play it, I get to the title screen and go, eh. And that takes a while to download. I don't like The Last of Us, and Spider-Man has so much filler in it. It's like, I like it, but it has so much filler that I have no real interest in getting into Spider-Man 2 for a good while at least. God of War 2018 made me overwhelmed. There was so much going into that game. It just had too much going on. The older God of War games were much shorter and much tighter. You know, a limited number of things you could do, and there was no downtime, really. Just solid action game. I haven't finished it. I've platinumed it, but mostly because it was an easy platinum. But yeah, it was a bit of a slog getting through the whole thing. I kind of thought it was finished, like halfway through the game. I was like, oh wait, this is only the halfway point? Fuck. Anyway, Jim Ryan was talking about or expressing his frustrations that I don't like gatekeeping our audience, to our like wonderful entertainment and so on, because our studios are making great games and what you have, except they're all making the same game, and not diversifying it enough. So they're not bringing in different demographics. Like, they've effectively lost me. Let's go there. They've lost older generation gamer. They've lost younger generation gamer who don't really go in for the whole narrative driven thing. They're really hitting a very narrow band of people who can also afford to spend $70+ and yeah, they're hitting it. It's a pretty sizable chunk of the market. I'm not going to say that like my demographic or whatever make up a huge amount of the market, and younger players obviously don't have disposable income, so they're relying on free to play or whatever. Also wouldn't like Horizon or Ragnarok. They're too big. Horizon itself is way too big. I'm kind of interested because there's like a flying mechanic and I would like to try that out, but not for like a 200-hour game. and who knows how long into the game it is before you actually get to fly. Um, but anyway, they're not diversifying. So instead of expanding and diversifying the number and types of games PlayStation offered in the PS5 era, the company retreated into fewer and bigger sequels of existing hardcore franchises under Ryan's leadership. And then he went on to go, yeah, 2 million live service games by 2030, whatever. Which is not going to happen now because they don't have the money. Simply pushing existing big budget cinematic teams, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla, Insomniac, and so on, Sucker Punch. I forgot about Sucker Punch actually. Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know what's happening with them. I assume they're pretty far into Tsushima 2 or whatever they're going to call it, Electric Boogaloo. Decided to push their already existing big budget cinematic teams to make live service spin-off things was obviously not going to work. Was not going to create the brand new Fortnite or Roblox because Fortnite and Roblox still exist. People aren't. Flying does seem interesting. Yeah, I know. So I do want to try that, but not for like 200 hours of gameplay. The issue with trying to make the next Fortnite and Roblox is that Fortnite and Roblox exist and have not really waned. Roblox hasn't really waned in popularity. Fortnite maybe. Roblox has not. And also, who wants the next Roblox when it's already there and free to play? Who wants the next Fortnite when, if they want Fortnite, it's there, it's free. Stop trying to make the new one, guys. It's done. It's happened already. Let it go. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty sad news, and it's very frustrating because I'm admittedly a PlayStation fanboy, and it's frustrating what they're doing with service. This is an article from Aftermath, written by Luke Plunkett, again, also a former Kotaku person. PlayStation's London studio, creators of the revolutionary SingStar, deserve better than this. This is a fairly lengthy article. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's mostly just to point out that Sony of America, of the US, since they moved headquarters, have effectively forgotten or are deliberately ignorant of the brand of PlayStation and what it meant to people outside of the US. SingStar, probably not well known North American territories. In Europe, it was a huge deal. It was responsible for a lot of sales of PS2s, and it was responsible for bringing in women into video games. And not in general, but it did bring in a lot of the casual market. Like, it had a lot of the Wii to it, in the way the Wii sort of made it more palatable for the console to be in the living room for multiple people to play, for grannies and tiny babies to play. SingStar was this kind of, this is really easy to get into. All you need is a voice, and that's it. Like, the controller was a microphone that had a button on it. Like, there was very little to it. It was one of the most successful video games of all time. In Europe, it sold ridiculous amounts. You could not keep it on the shelf. It was multiple times you would see it in, top 10 sellers if you would go into Electronics Boutique or Game or GameStop or whatever, and you would see, SingStar, it's always there. It's always in the top 10. High in the top 10 as well. And it would be out of stock so often. And when they were selling PS2 as a bundle with SingStar, that was gone almost immediately. And it's just, the rest of the article is basically just lamenting that London Studio has this great track record of putting out really important games in the industry, in the same way that Japan Studio did. Japan Studio put out Shadow of the Colossus. Japan Studio put out Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Gravity Rush, Vib Ribbon, Rez. Actually, no, the Rez isn't them. Vib Ribbon is them, I think. They're definitely the other games I mentioned. Those are huge games for PlayStation. And they were just closed. Just whatever. And then London Studio, same deal. Psygnosis earlier were responsible for Wipeout. Wipeout, huge for PlayStation. And again, they were just shuttered because why? They're not narrative-driven cinematic yet. Prestige things. Anyway, it's a good article. I'm not going to go all the way into it because Aftermath is a paid service, and I think it's doing them a disservice to disseminate it as for free. The link is there. They do have like a first 5 articles or whatever are free or something like that. So it's the only one you read. You could probably get to it. Anyway, moving on. Sony aren't the only people doing layoffs. EA are also doing layoffs. So CEO Andrew Wilson tells EA staff 5% of them will be laid off via empty and infuriating email. Basically, doesn't even tell them they're laid off. Like, it's such corporate slop that you couldn't even tell the people were actually laid off. Anyway, less than a year after the last round of layoffs, more layoffs are coming. So they didn't do their 10% all in one go. They split it into 5% and then 5% again. Anyway, you could just come out and say that they're actually fired, but they didn't. Anyway, he first spent 3 paragraphs talking about how EA is doing great, leading the industry, and getting increasing engagement from fans. And that means everyone's unemployed now. Why? The company is moving away from the development of future licensed IP and towards our own IP, sports, and massive online communities. Therefore, all these people need to go. Okay. So, on top of 5% of people being laid off, a bunch of games were also cancelled. So, there was going to be a Battlefield single player standalone thing from Ridgeline, which has now effectively been stopped. The game director himself had already left at that point, so I guess he already had the news that the game probably wasn't going to go ahead. Respawn were working on a first-person Star Wars game. This is great after hearing Dark Forces is out, and now what could have been a great successor has been cancelled. Hey, does Star Wars Jedi do really, really well for the company? Yeah, it did. It made a lot of money. People really want Star Wars games. Let's not make Star Wars games. Oh, okay, good. But we're gonna make Jedi 3 though, right? Yeah, of course. It makes lots of money. People want Star Wars games. But other Star Wars games, no. Oh my god. Anyway, yes, Star Wars makes them a lot of money, but no, let's not make any Star Wars. I believe it was going to be either a Mandalorian game or some kind of bounty hunter first-person thing, which is very much like the Dark Forces Jedi Knight stuff. Anyway, it's incredibly frustrating. It's sort of bleakly funny to announce you're focusing on online communities when everyone has just decided they have live service fatigue. Again, there's people jumping on the live service bandwagon when it's gone and broken down and been replaced with a different wagon. Like, it's over. You need to give that like a solid 20 years before people want to go back. Makes total sense. I know, exactly. A lot of the devs they jettisoned in 2023 were veterans of, well, BioWare, because that's where the vast majority of their unique, fully owned IP is. Visceral Studios they shut down, so Dead Space is gone. They did a remake for it, but I don't think they're going to go any further. Mirror's Edge, same. They just decided to forget about it. So all they really have going for them now are Mass Effect and Dragon Age. The last entries of both games were not particularly well received. Mass Effect Andromeda was not liked in any way whatsoever, and Dragon Age Inquisition was too big and boring. I didn't like it. I'm a big fan of Dragon Age, but it's put out 3 games and 2 of them were not good. It's starting to feel like Star Wars. Put out 9 films. 2 of them are good. Why are you a fan of this? I don't know why I am. I really liked Andromeda and Inquisition. I didn't like it. Here's the thing about Andromeda. I would have liked Andromeda a lot more if it wasn't called Mass Effect. And Inquisition, to me, was too simple. It just strayed too far from the original Dragon Age. It's one of your favorite games. Sorry, Banana. Not for me. I don't know. I just think it didn't do the Dragon Age series justice and was too reluctant to go into the darker parts of the Dragon Age lore. Like, it doesn't go into Tevinter stuff enough, and they give you the option to play called, can't remember the name of the race now. Qunari. Gives you an opportunity to play one of them. And you could have delved like really far into their culture, because they have a really unique and interesting culture. But your created character of the Qunari was not born into that culture. Conveniently, they're born into the exact same culture as everybody else. I was like, what the fuck? Why'd I bother? You know? Dragon Age Origins had this really good thing in that your created character would have a specific origin based off their starting class or their starting race or whatever it was. and they never continued it. Dragon Age 2, you were effectively the same character with a different skin. Um, and Dragon Age Inquisition, again, you might as well have just been the same character, but you just looked a little bit different. And they really just, I really wanted, when I saw that you could be a Qunari, I was like, okay, cool. They'll go into the like Qunari origin. I get to see what their culture is like. You know, they'll really flesh it out. They went into it a little bit in Dragon Age 2, and that was cool. Like, I really liked that side of Dragon Age 2. It didn't go in far enough as far as I was concerned. There are some pretty good story beats in Dragon Age 2. It's just the gameplay I don't like. But they just cheaped out on it. It's like you could have made something interesting. And I don't want to get into that. That's not what the story's about. Anyway, a lot of the devs they jettisoned in 2023 were veterans of BioWare, so now they want to focus on their own IP. They've lost a lot of people who knew a lot about those IP. You know, they've actually lost a lot of their writers, which is what IP needs. You need people to make you care about the game, and that's the writer. The writer is what does that. There's a lot they could have changed into, but yeah, I mean, Dragon Age 2 was also rushed, so I'm sure they only had so much time to work on it. Anyway, there are definitely no simmering issues that may snowball into huge problems. Yeah, this is about sports games in that they're relying massively on their loot box stuff, and that's increasingly coming under scrutiny. And their attempts to make it seem like it's not gambling, it's not working anymore. They're gonna have some problem there. But yeah, I really hate that our business is doing great, which is why we're getting rid of you. Yeah, doesn't really make sense, does it? Anyway, moving on. Is that it with the layoffs? No, sorry, it's not. There's more layoffs. Supermassive, now also getting some layoffs. This is from Jason Schreier over on Bloomberg. This particular link is a gifted link, which means if you use this exact link, you'll get this article. You'll be able to read it without having to subscribe to Bloomberg. But yeah, Supermassive, the people behind Until Dawn, Quarry, The Dark Pictures, that kind of thing. 150 staff members are at risk of redundancy and will lay off roughly 90. So again, this is a British studio, which means they have to go through a consultation process. They can't just let people go, but they are intending to do it. Supermassive is a studio with more than 300 employees, so 90 employees out of 300 is... that's 30%-ish. Of the studio. That's not great. That's not good. Anyway, they have worked with some big studios. They've worked with Sony. They've worked with Take-Two, and yet they're not immune from the layoff stuff. A lot of Supermassive's problems can be laid at them taking on too many projects at once. They've kind of taken the Telltale approach, where it's like, hey, a publisher has come to us with an idea for a game. Cool, let's make it. And they're like, okay, but we're already making like 5 games. Yeah, let's make 6 games. It's like, no, hang on, we don't have the people for that. Another project, 7 games. No, stop. Let us actually finish a game first and put it out. Anyway, that was Telltale, and that's why Telltale doesn't exist anymore. Supermassive is very much going down the same line. These layoffs are probably related to it, because I don't think they're able to sustain that kind of output anymore. But yeah, even, well-known studios, independent studios aren't immune for the whole layoff thing. Okay, it's not all bad news, necessarily. This isn't exactly amazing news, because, well, you'll see, but at least it's getting there. So Spyro Crash Bandicoot developer ditches Activision and goes independent. So this is Toys for Bob. Toys for Bob are best known now for Crash Bandicoot 4 and the Spyro Trilogy collection. They have acquired themselves, effectively. So they have acquired a private interest group who are looking to, I think it's agreed now that they have bought themselves out from Activision or Microsoft, whatever way you want to look at it, leaving Activision and becoming an independent studio. Hasn't been declared how much they had to spend, but it would have been a lot of money, a couple of $100 million. Still in the early stages of developing their next game and are ways away from announcing it, so don't expect them to be announcing Crash 5 anytime soon. And about Crash Bandicoot in the first place, they don't own that IP. Xbox, Microsoft own the Crash Bandicoot IP. They are in talks to partner with Microsoft, but as a sort of contract thing. Like Microsoft wouldn't own them, just contractually work on another Crash Bandicoot game or Spyro or whatever. But they are working on their own IP. Before they got into the um, Crash Bandicoot Spyro stuff, they were working on, or not working on, they were known for some other games. They were known for Star Control before that, and then Skylanders after they were purchased by Activision. Then they went on to make Skylanders, if you don't remember, it was the Toys to Life thing, where you would buy a toy and connect it to your console, and then you could play with the toy in the game instead of with the toy in front of you. Never understood that. Why wouldn't you just play with the toy? Anyway, that was Skylanders. There's all sorts of plastic shit. I'm sure that's responsible for the vast majority of the microplastics out in the world, but it's probably not. Anyway, then they went on to remaster the 3 Spyro games, and then Crash 4, which was pretty well received. And then they were thrown into the Call of Duty mines. Like a lot of Activision studios, they're just there to support Call of Duty. That's it. No, you don't get to make your own game. No, we're not even going to attach your name to Call of Duty. You're just there as a support studio. Guess they weren't happy with that. Guess they weren't happy with that setup. Anyway, studio lost close to 90 people, and its offices in California were closed. So they were hit pretty hard by the close to 2,000 layoffs from Activision. But maybe they'll bounce back from this. We'll see. That's a lot of people to lose. That's a lot of experience and knowledge of how they make their games gone, effectively. Maybe they'll be able to hire them back. Possible. You know, some of the more senior people might be happy to go back. Junior people can probably find something. Maybe they'll be happy to go back too. I don't know. Anyway, not the only people trying to buy themselves out. Saber Interactive are also set to split from Embracer Group for close to $500 million deal. Saber Interactive are planning to go privately owned. They also have private investors. This, I believe, is not set in stone just yet, but is effectively considered to be a done deal. The deal will see Saber Interactive become a privately owned company. Saber are responsible for a lot of AA and single A type games. They make okay games, and that's fine because there is a market for them. Because that's a thing, again, as I've said, Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo have forgotten to do, which is in between your big giant games, you need to have smaller games make up for the difference. But they don't do that anymore, and it's left to these companies to do it. They don't have the money to do it. Anyway, so the plan is that Saber will buy themselves out. They will continue work on Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the remake. That has been in development hell for a very long time now. What is not known yet is if Saber are taking their subsidiaries with them. So when Embracer bought Saber Interactive, they also got a bunch of Saber Interactive subsidiaries, such as 3D Realms, the Duke Nukem people. 34 Big Things, I don't know. 4A Games are the Metro people. Aspire do a lot of remakes and remasters. Beamdog, similarly, do a lot of remakes and remasters. Bytex I haven't heard of. Demiurge I have heard, but I don't remember what they do. Digic Pictures, Fractured Byte, don't know them. Madhead Games? No, I know them, but I don't remember what they make. New World, I think, are responsible for things like I can't remember. Vampire the Masquerade games and Werewolf the Apocalypse and that kind of thing. I think that's them. And a bunch of other ones. Slipgate Ironworks are the people behind Ghost Runner. Tuxedo Labs, I know the name, but I don't remember what they make. I don't know. I'd have to look. I had planned to look all these up, but I also got up at like 11:45. So I had to, I had to get this stream working first. Anyway, the deal includes an option for Saber Interactive to bring along multiple Embracer Group subsidiaries, but it's not clear yet which subsidiaries. Thought we'd get a good werewolf game. No, still no good werewolf game. No good werewolf game. And there hasn't been a good Vampire the Masquerade game since Vampire the Masquerade. Or Bloodlines, rather. Again, not the only company leaving Embracer. Gearbox also planning to leave Embracer. These are the people behind Borderlands and a lot of other games. They were acquired by Embracer for $1.3 billion back in 2021. And that's obviously since turned into a financial disaster because Embracer don't know how to use money. A decision has been made regarding the studio's future. The decision is just not clear what exactly it is because I think they're still trying to iron out the details. The deal was that Randy Pitchford, head of Gearbox and magician apparently, and also noted both porn connoisseur and Medieval Times patron. Look up that story. Ordinarily, I'd say don't look up that story. Don't look up that one because it's fucking stupid. Anyway, they had like 3 possible scenarios what they would do. They'd either stay with Embracer and try to weather the storm, try to get themselves sold to somebody else, or finance a buyout themselves and go back to being an independently run thing. It appears that they are looking to be sold to somebody else. So they're going down the private investment group, which is the same thing Saber Interactive are doing. The exact deal, we don't know what's going to happen. One issue is that Randy Pitchford did promise internally that those cuts, people being, cut off from Embracer, layoffs and stuff, wouldn't result in substantial layoffs at Gearbox at the time. But a lot of people were let go across recruiting, HR, other operations. Those who aren't impacted by the current layoffs are still having to deal with freezes on pay and hiring. So obviously things are not great at the company. Vague and in a holding pattern is definitely par for the course at the moment and has been for the vast majority of 2023. So they're kind of hoping that this, buyout will result in people getting pay. Pay increases to deal with the massive amounts of price gouging that's going on by other corporations outside of the video game industry. So in order to keep down their costs, again, they're doing what a lot of other studios are doing, which is just focusing on the IPs they're known for, not really putting out anything new. Kind of what people want because they have fatigue from seeing the exact same series with just a bigger number at the end of it, but whatever. So Fallout to Borderlands 3 is undergoing a reshuffle as other projects are being stopped. People who are working on those projects are being pushed onto what will probably be Borderlands 4. Which means people who would have been senior in that position are now being pushed down or pushed out, and that's obviously going to result in people possibly leaving. And there is apparently a sequel to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which is effectively Magic Borderlands. That is also undergoing, but I think it's being redone or restarted or something like that. Anyway, we have lost senior people because of this concentration on just the 2 projects instead of the multiple projects they had going. Obviously, they're trying to push everyone who's working on those multiple projects onto these 2 projects, and that means some people are going, hey, I was going to be senior creative artist on this anymore, and I'm not now. Fuck you, I'm leaving. Not great. There we are. Point out why Embracer is in this position. As we knew, it spent a lot of money assuming it was going to get a big payday from Saudi Arabian prince. They were looking at a $2 billion payday, and they effectively had already spent that $2 billion. And then the deal fell down, and now they don't have $2 billion to pay back. It grew fat on low-interest financing and a post-pandemic market frenzy that allowed it to snatch up big-name studios and IPs, which is where pretty much all of the studios are now. They all got their loans at extremely low interest rates. In some cases, 0% interest rates. And those interest rates have gone back up, and they didn't foresee that. Why would they go back up? Because you're fucking idiots, that's why. Anyway, the thing a lot of us are hoping for is being bought from Embracer and allowed to keep doing what we're doing, or getting back to where we were before project-wise, due to more and better funding. A lot of people are just looking for stability at this point. And again, we're not done with the people buying themselves out. Remedy have acquired full rights to the Control IP from 505 Games for, it seems kind of cheap, honestly, 17 million euro. Remedy are based in Finland. They use the euro. Anyway, Finnish video game developer now owns the rights to the hit 2019 action game Control. Melwin is playing on her channel, Melwin26.tv. Check it out. Alongside its upcoming sequel and the multiplayer spin-off Condor, which we know absolutely nothing about. 505 will continue to publish Control up until the end of December, end of this year, effectively. The cost of the deal is 17 million, which is the amount that 505 had invested into development of Control 2 and Condor, which is kind of weird. So they're not actually buying the IP so much as just buying 505 out of their current investment. Why it's kind of cheap. And according to Remedy, due to some other receivables, the actual amount will be even less than that. So they're getting this for like super cheap. Like 505 must really need the money, which they do because they've had to shut down a bunch of their studios. That's the other news from 505. Why were they giving control away for so cheap? Because they fucking need the money. Digital Bros, which owns 505 Games, is shifting its strategy to focus on fewer titles and on IP that it owns outright with long-term value creation. It's interesting that now that they're, shitting the bed, now they want to look at long-term value. Now they want to do that. Not, while things were good, you should probably have been looking at long-term value. No? Now that things are bad, now we're going to look at it. But anyway, that means Remedy effectively own all of their IP at this point. They were very careful to keep Alan Wake in-house, so they own all of Alan Wake. And now they own all of Control, and since Control and Alan Wake are somewhat in a shared universe, they can do a bit more of that now, properly. I thought Remedy had control of Control. Remedy didn't own the IP, was the issue. So while they were still, in partnership, in contract with 505 to make Control 2, 505 were fully within their rights to go to a different studio to do Control 2. It would have been a very bad idea, but they absolutely could do it. And that has happened before in a lot of studios. The one that comes to my head, because I thought it was a stupid idea at the time, was they took Little Big Planet away from Media Molecule, and they gave it to Sumo Digital instead. Now, they did a good job, but to take it away from the people who are super into all of that user-created stuff, had all of the tools to do it, had a huge legacy of doing it, to give it to a different studio who did not have any of that experience whatsoever. Kind of stupid. Anyway, they have Alan Wake. Yes, they do. They have full control of Alan Wake. They bought that out a while ago. I'm not sure who had the IP for it before. It was Microsoft, actually. But yeah, they did buy it out. So yeah, as far as I'm aware now, they own all of their IP at this point. Control 2 will be disappointing because it will be made by him now. It was going to be made by him anyway, but now they can say that Control 3 happens would also be made by them, and so on. Alan Wake 3, or whatever they decide to call it. Alan Wake 2.5 American Nightmare, European Nightmare. I don't know. What was the sequel that isn't a sequel called? I don't remember. Anyway, union criticizes Rockstar decision to call workers back to the office. So they're doing Rockstar are doing hey, remember when we said you could come back just 3 days out of the week instead of 5? And we weren't going to use that as a wage to get you to come back for all the days? Well, yeah, you want to come back. It's everybody back to the office now. No more working from home. Cool. Thanks for doing that. Anyway, Rockstar have demanded a return to the office 5 days a week starting in the middle of April of this year. The British Guild Union. Anyway, IWGB Game Workers Union has criticized the decision for obvious fucking reasons, but anyway, we'll go into it. They've called the move reckless decision-making and accusing the studio of broken promises, because they promised not to do this and they just went fucking ahead and did it anyway. Earlier in the year, when they were trying to get people to come back for a hybrid thing, they were saying, no, don't worry, this isn't our first step. This is a direct quote from them. This isn't our first step to 5 days a week. No one wants to go back to the old way of working. Cool. Workers criticizing the move have pointed to the widely accepted benefits of remote work and highlighted the difficulties that the decision will pose to employees with disabilities, care responsibilities, or health issues, as well as the people who have literally moved away and are nowhere even remotely close to the studio anymore. Oh no, fuck you, I guess. Additional concerns have been raised by those who have moved their lives further away from the studios or made adjustments around their families that would now need to be repealed in under 6 weeks to comply with the demands. This is obviously also a pretense to get rid of people. Oh, you're not complying with our new policy. That is incredibly unworkable for you. Oh well, guess we're going to have to fire you. Anyway. On top of that, Rockstar management are refusing to engage with workers, which is somewhat illegal, really. Have to engage with a union if they have union representation and it's recognized by the central board. You have to do that. You are going to get sued. Anyway. Rockstar, for their part, for the reason that they want everyone to come back to the office, are citing security concerns and reduced productivity, but they are not providing any evidence to support it. Now, some people have pointed out that the leak of GTA 6 is essentially their pretense for trying to get everybody back and saying that we don't want any of the gameplay being leaked now that we're close to finishing it and so on. But again, citation needed. Where's your evidence? We don't care. We are your boss and you're going to do what we tell you to do. And instead, they're just going to say, well, fuck you, I guess. After so many broken promises, we now fear management may even be paving the way for a return to toxic crunch practices, which they also said they weren't going to do. One huge benefit of remote work is that the whole crunch pressure is just not there. And just sign off. No one glaring at you, or you're not seeing people, sleeping under their desk trying to get work done. There's no peer pressure from anything like that. None of that's there if you're doing remote work. Anyway, senior leadership need to rethink their reckless decision-making and engage with the staff to find an arrangement that works for everybody. Another person said, as usual, there has been zero consultation with us, the people who these policy changes most affect. I guess I am shocked. Anyway, we'll see what comes with that, but I imagine Rockstar will get their way. They'll probably lose a bunch of important people along the way. Anyway, speaking of silly lawsuits that are probably on the way, Nintendo files lawsuits against Yuzu emulator creators. Firm says that the emulator is responsible for all of the piracy of Tears of the Kingdom, except it isn't, because you fundamentally misunderstand what emulators are for, but of course you are deliberately misunderstanding what they're for, because you just don't like them. Anyway, they're claiming that it allows users to play Switch titles on Windows, Linux, and Android consoles, which it does do. That part is true. However, the other part is not. The video game emulator is a piece of software that allows users to unlawfully play pirated video games. They have no idea that they've been pirated. All they're doing is playing software. This is the same argument that's used against torrenting and peer-to-peer networks and stuff like that. They have no idea what files you're using. None. We're just making it work. It's the user who has gotten these files illegally or whatever. Now, you could also argue that if you weren't planning on buying the game, you're not actually losing a sale, and there's all sorts of other nuances for piracy. Anyway, I won't go into it. They're just saying that this emulator is used to unlawfully play pirated video games that were published only for a specific console on a general purpose computing device. Again, they're going to cite this anti-circumvention thing of the DMCA. The problem here is that once you own a product, you can do whatever you want with it. That is central to like third-party selling and stuff like that. It's the reason why you are allowed to rip music from CDs, why you are allowed to rip films from DVDs and stuff like that. You bought it. You own it. You can do what you want with it. You have the cartridge and a means to rip the game out of the cartridge. You're well within your rights to do it. And an emulator just lets you play it. Same way your DLC lets you play practically every video thing. The same way any MP3 player can play any piece of music. Like, it does not matter. It does not matter that it was only supposed to ever be played on this one CD that we put out. It don't matter. Anyway, they're alleging that Tears of the Kingdom was available a full 2 weeks before the game had actually been released. It was available to be downloaded from pirated sites for more than 1 million times. Again, that has nothing to do with Yuzu. They are not hosting these files. They are not advertising where you can get these files. All they do is play the software they are given. That's it. Again, this is the same thing that was used to shut down Napster. This is how Metallica went after them, because they were saying, oh, you're hosting our music, our pirated, it's been pirated and it's been stolen, ravel. And that got Napster shut down because they just couldn't afford the lawsuit. That's the issue. It's fully legal. They don't do anything that's illegal. It's people putting stuff up that's illegal. That's the problem. It's the same protections that sites like Twitter have, that Facebook have, called the safe harbor carve out for the DMCA. Which is, Twitter is not responsible for what people post. They'll do their best to take it down if it's illegal stuff, but they're not responsible for it. You can't sue them for putting up something illegal, for a user putting up something illegal. That's how those sites work, ever. If it was a case that they were responsible for literally everything that was posted, legally responsible, the site would be gone. Facebook would be gone, would never have taken off. Just would have been sued into oblivion. It's the same thing here for peer-to-peer networks and emulation software and any of that kind of stuff that's piracy adjacent. It's legal. Not doing anything wrong. You are fully free to share your files with other people. And they have no way of knowing how you got those files. They'll take them down if it's pointed out to them, but they're not legally responsible for it. Now the thing is, Nintendo have done this before. They've sent cease and desist things to the Dolphin emulator people. Dolphin is used to emulate GameCube games. Dolphin were planning to launch their emulator on Steam. They were sent to cease and desist. Valve got cold feet and repealed Dolphin emulator. But again, it's fully legal. If you had a GameCube disc and ripped the ISO off it, you own it. You bought the game. You're just choosing to play it on something else. Anyway, there's some problems with the anti-circumvention clause in the DMCA, that's just effectively what Nintendo is using to just wedge themselves and kill off these emulators and make it so that you can only ever play their games on their own consoles and nothing else. Not great. Not a great look. Anyway, moving on. In more depressing news, so this is on the community side of things. It's still somewhat industry bullshit, but it's also just how we approach video games in the first place. Children face social pressures to spend money in games, study suggests. So this isn't necessarily new. This was more of like anecdotally known, but now like a proper scientific study has been done on it. A study conducted by Norwegian researchers has suggested children feel increasing social pressure to spend money in games. So this is mostly like bullying because you have default skin in Fortnite or whatever. Like, kind of already knew that was a thing, but you know, they've had like actual research done on it properly. The study reveals the children the pair spoke to worried about being bullied and being unable to make friends unless they spent money to buy cosmetic items. There's no sharp distinction between their online and offline world, different parts of the social world they navigate. So there's no distinction effectively that you're a different person online than you are offline, or that the character you're playing isn't a continuation of your own social status or anything like that. Which, as an adult, you have, you know, your brain fully formed enough to be able to make that distinction, but kids are stupid, so they don't make that distinction effectively, and then that leads to bullying. If you don't play with anyone, you kind of have nothing to talk about at school, and I heard things like, this is a 13-year-old girl player playing things like Fortnite and stuff. I heard things like, go back to the kitchen, and I was like, you're a girl, die, 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 and it's not great. No? Again, kids are shit, but they hear this from somewhere. Probably Twitch streamers who might be saying it ironically and the kid's not getting that it's ironic. I don't know. I don't have kids. I don't plan to have kids. I'm hoping to never have this problem. Anyway, many of the games this money was spent on include loot boxes, season passes, and time-limited items. Children in the study spent from 100 to over 1,000 Norwegian kroner, which roughly translate to about $100 to $1,000. Norwegian government is currently looking at ways to tackle manipulative game design. They have joined efforts with other European European government bodies, kind of point out risks created by the blurring of lines between gaming and gambling. As I said earlier, with EA relying on their sports stuff, Ultimate Team stuff in FIFA, that's coming under increasing scrutiny. That's going to be an issue for them soon. Really soon. In 2022, a report commissioned by the Norwegian Consumer Council concluded loot boxes are exploitative and predatory and called for better regulation. That hasn't been too long. I know it's like 2 years, but in the government sense of things, that's quite recent. Anyway, research conducted by Newcastle and Loughborough universities in 2022 also concluded that loot boxes cause financial and emotional harm to teenagers and children and adults. And adults, too. It's happened to have a bit more money, but again, same. Researcher Leonie Zhao found multiple companies were in breach of the advertising regulations as of October 2003. So, on the heel of this Newcastle and Loughborough study, the UK industry agreed to restrict access to loot boxes with some guidelines and such on. They were meant to be followed by publishers, but they don't. They don't do it because there's no scrutiny in the industry. Anyway, I'm going to leave. I was going to leave Final Fantasy to loop, but then I'd have to look at it, so I'm not going to. I'm going to leave Star Wars Dark Forces to loop instead. Right. Anyway, that was your news for 26th of February to the 3rd of March, 2024. We had a quick look at No Rest for the Wicked, which is this really interesting action RPG, isometric action RPG coming from Moon Studios, the people behind the Ori games. It looks really good. It's going to be in early access in April at some point. I may have to break my early access rule. Maybe. Thinking about it. We'll see how long it's in early access for. If it goes past a year, I probably will have to do it. Anyway, then we saw some stuff coming out of Pokemon. We don't know a whole lot of what's going on there. There is going to be a trading card game app where you can collect all of the cards now without having to spend $1 billion on a Pikachu. To do all of my too long didn't watches. New releases: Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Star Wars Dark Forces, Brothers of Tale of Two Sons remake. Some of those were asked for, some of those very much were not. Monthly games, we have PlayStation Plus Essential, Sifu, probably the standout, Formula 1 2023, Destiny 2, one of the expansions, I don't know which one, I wasn't paying attention. Wasn't paying attention to my own stream. And then some fourth game that I don't remember. Fourth game. Oh yeah, Hello Neighbor 2. Whatever. Industry bullshit, Sony just absolutely shitting the bed. Just taking all of their reputation from the PS4 and just pissing all over it, basically. You know, pissing all over its own legacy, which is not great to see, because a lot of my favorite games and memories of video games in general are from PlayStation, or were on the PlayStation, we'll say. Not necessarily made by them, but certainly made, like I would have played it on the console, you know? Anyway, not great to see. EA also shooting themselves in the foot by going, hey, people like Star Wars games, so let's stop making Star Wars games. And let's go back to our IP, except we fired everybody who was responsible for that IP. Yeah, cool. Maybe you should have paid any attention whatsoever to your business. Anyway, Supermassive also suffering some layoffs, but that is mostly just because they have overstretched themselves. Some good news on the Embracer side of things and the Microsoft side of things. Toys for Bob are buying themselves out of Activision. Saber Interactive and Gearbox are buying themselves out of Embracer. And Remedy have reacquired the Control IP from 505 Games. That's all pretty great news. And then on the community side of things, kids are shit. kids are being shit to themselves. Anyway, that is the news going on in the industry. But what is going on the channel this and next week? So we have our game card for 2024. This has had no change from last week because I did not get around to playing Stasis Bone Totem this week. I am planning to play it later today at some point. Melvin has the flu. I was going to check when you were streaming so that we weren't going to clash, but I assume with the flu you're probably not streaming today. I don't know. I will start Stasis Bone Totem at some point this week because I want to get at least one game finished before Alone in the Dark comes out, because that is out pretty soon. And I would like to play that when it's launched. So yeah, I think it's out in like 2 weeks, something like that, 20-something, I think, of March. Anyway, what did we do this week? We played demo for Alone in the Dark. Yeah, I think it looks interesting. So Penny's Big Breakaway we played on Friday as part of my Impression series, Fully Plays Games a Bit. It's a lot of fun. It has like really good traversal mechanics that are a little difficult to get used to at the beginning, and I will admit I still wasn't really used to them by the end of it, but it is something I want to get better at, let's put it that way. You have this yo-yo, and the yo-yo is used to move you about the world. You can ride on top of it, you kind of turn into a bit of a Sonic the Hedgehog type thing. You can fling it out in front of you and then pull yourself to where the yo-yo is, or you can use it to sort of plant in place and then swing from it like a grappling hook, or use it to fly up into the air and stuff like that. So if you remember or have played Super Mario Odyssey, the way Mario moves about with the cap, it has a lot of similarities to it, but like more of that. It's not as tight as Super Mario Odyssey. Penny is a bit floaty, which is a lot of where the kind of cumbersome part comes from. But I think it's really well done. And I do want to get a lot better at it. Anyway, that video is up over on the VOD channel over on YouTube if you want to check that out. It's also probably still there on Twitch. Actually, not probably. It is. It is definitely still there on Twitch. Anyway, that's Penny's Big Breakaway. The next game that we're going to be taking a look at as part of Fully Plays Games a Bit is Cocoon. Because we're just about on the cusp of the 6-month threshold for the Impressions series. That's not a vagina. Might be a vagina. Anyway, Cocoon is from the same minds as Limbo and Inside, which are both excellent puzzle games. Cocoon is from at least the same creative. I'm not sure if it's the same team. I actually don't think it is the same team. It got some really good critical reception and community reception. A lot of people seem to really, really like it. So I want to play it, and so I'm going to do it. We're going to play that on Friday. That is the plan. So next week will be effectively the same as this week, but Cocoon instead of Penny's Big Breakaway. So Banishers we're still doubling up on because that game is looking like it's quite big. So I'm doing double streams of that just to try to get through as much of it as I can. Faces Bone Totem will continue. As I said, I will try to play some of it later today. Cocoon on Friday as part of my Impressions series, and then Raincode continues. I don't know how long is left in that game. It feels like I'm near the end, but it also told me that the game has 6 chapters, and I'm only on chapter 4. So, but it feels like I'm near the end of the story, so I don't know what's happening there. It does have a prologue and a chapter 0, so it could be that it has 6 chapters but doesn't have a chapter 6. It ends on chapter 4. They're just including chapter 0 and the prologue as chapters. I don't know. I don't want to spoil myself, so I haven't checked. But it feels like I'm near the end of the story. Anyway, that's the plan for next week. And then we'll be back around again on Sunday with the weekly news recap. So that's it from me for now. I was going to say for today, but no, I will be back with Stasis Bone Totem once my voice recovers. It's getting a bit raspy. Anyway, thanks for keeping me company. Melwin, I hope you feel better with your flu. And I will see some of you guys. Oh, Tita, Banana as well. Thank you for joining as well. Apologies. And anyone who is lurking, that's appreciated too. If you want to catch up on any of the games I have mentioned or any of the VODs and stuff like that, again, youtube.com/DoomFrame5. And if you want to hang out in the Discord link is under my face somewhere. I need to actually put it in stream so people can see it. But I forget to do that. Maybe I should write these things down. What a great idea. Paying attention. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. I'll be back later. Just keep an eye on your notifications because I don't really know what time it's gonna be yet. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, hopefully I'll see you guys then. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, and maybe see you on Tuesday for Banishers, or Thursday for Stasis, or Friday for Cocoon, or Saturday for Raincode, or next week for the news. Bye. See you. Bye-bye.